Welcome to the Master Your Magnetism podcast, where I interview top experts to help you create the life and relationship you've always wanted. Today, I'm talking with Antia Boyd, my very good friend and fellow coach. She's a love and dating coach for women who helps people who have trust issues or who tend to attract emotionally unavailable men really magnetize that right man to them. So, welcome, Antia. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hey, Helena. How are you?
Great. I'm really looking forward to diving into this topic. Today, we're going to be sharing 5 real reasons why men respond to distance when they're not contacting you, especially. Auntie is a total expert on this topic. So let's dive in. What's the first thing you want to say about why men respond to distance?
Well, first of all, it's not because they like playing games, because I know I hear this all the time. Do I need to turn myself into a pretzel? Do I need to become somebody that I'm not? No, absolutely not. But it's adhering to the laws of relationship, right? It's adhering to the laws of like how a person works inside and out. And by the way, how you work too, but you just delete that in that very moment, right? Because you become more anxious. So the first is actually understanding that we always have a need for tension inside of ourselves. So think about it this way: when you flirt, there's tension, right? There's like, ooh, there's like excitement. I don't know what the other person thinks. It's intriguing. It's like it's magnetic. It's kind of scary, but also exciting at the same time. And so we are actually seeking those kind of experiences because they are not predictable. They cause a state change inside of ourselves, chemically, intellectually, emotionally, on all levels. And so that's actually what we're constantly seeking. We're eating certain foods to get a state change and so on. So when the man has actually some distance, guess what? He gets to experience a state change as well. And he gets to experience himself in this tension. I'm like, is she still interested in me? Oh, she's seeing someone else? I don't know. So you guys are both in that unknown, in that uncertainty.
So true. And by the way, I forgot to mention, we're actually recording this episode for YouTube as well. So if you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify or anywhere else, I'll include a link in the description or episode details if you'd like to see a video of this episode. And I love everything you said there, Antia. Of course, this is not a game and it's not a superficial strategy. This is not about ignoring a man's text messages or pretending that you don't like him or pretending anything really, or acting cold or distant in that sense. That will typically just cause you to attract someone who's in it for the conquest if you're pretending to be this ice queen. So you don't want to do that. You want to be yourself, just like you mentioned. I think that is great. So what is that next secret you wanted to share?
Well, the next one is actually he looks for a secure attachment style. Now, whether he looks for that consciously or unconsciously, that could be different from man to man. However, like he really feels like, you're co-regulating each other's nervous system. He picks up what you radiate out. And so if he feels anxiety, if he feels fear, his system starts to feel that too on some level, which is of course extremely repelling. So sometimes he will go through a test, but a test is actually not really like a conscious test. It's not an intentional test, right? Where, oh, I wonder like how stable does she stay when I'm distancing myself, right? Does she still love me when I'm not, all in and tell her every day I love her? Because look, it's unsustainable. I always say that a secure attachment style actually takes actions that are sustainable, right? So reaching out, whatever, every other day, or not making a compliment every single time when you talk, or whatever it is. And that, of course, makes the man feel safe as well. If you give him the space, then he feels like, oh, I get to find myself again. I get to redefine myself again. I get to feel safe because I get to have some space to be with myself as well. Because there's some energies inside of ourselves, known as archetypes, that grow more individually by actually being by yourself. And then there's other energies, also known as archetypes inside of you, that grow more, yes, in the couple identity. So you give the man a chance to grow himself equally.
I think that is great. Love everything you shared there. That's probably a topic for a whole nother episode. We could probably talk for an hour just on that. So, what is
Yeah.
that next reason why men respond to distance?
Yeah, and that goes along with what we said a little bit before, the tension, which is he can miss you.
Mm.
Look, men actually fall in love in the absence
Hmm.
of another person, not like in the presence. By the way, same truth for me as well. It's not just men, it's people,
Hmm.
right? And I think part of the process is it's because we like the body doesn't necessarily feel safe to process all of it in the presence of another person. So
Hmm.
they take it in at some level, but then the reflection takes place when they're by themselves, right? That's when they actually like put things into perspective. And why is that? Like, because, there's like a certain level of safety there. There's also a certain level of like, oh, now I get to feel my energy again versus being in your energy when I'm with you. And I'm maybe more concerned with how can I make you happy, or how can I make you, how can
Hmm.
I be the hero for you? It's actually like going into, okay, what do I want? So he gets to really miss you. And I mean, that's true for me. I don't know how it was for Tom, Helena, but my husband fell in love in the absence of
Hmm.
me.
I've done videos on that over on my YouTube channel, that a lot of women fall in love when they're with the man and they're physically together and they can look in each other's eyes and they're touching each other or anything like that where they feel connected. But a lot of men, their brains are wired a little more differently. They often fall in love or realize they're falling in love when they're away from us or missing us, and they have a little time and space to process all of these strong emotions. Men often get flooded with these emotions, especially when they're falling in love, and they can't process everything right there in this moment. Now, of course, we're not making excuses for men here. If a man has dropped off for a week or two at a time, obviously we want you to dump that guy and move on, right? But if he takes an afternoon or a day or so to kind of process, especially if you spent a lot of time together recently, maybe if you've gone on a trip together or spent all weekend together, sometimes after that, men need a little space to get back into their own life, work on some things, build that testosterone back up. Right. So this isn't a pass for men to just knock off the relationship for several days or a week. But a lot of times we can panic when we had a great time with the man and then he takes a few hours or a day or two for himself. And so hopefully this will help you feel better if in that situation. So Antia, I love everything you're sharing. What is that next reason you wanted to talk about here?
Yeah, it's him actually being able to empty out. So I think
Mm.
actually part of the reasons why a man falls in love in the absence of us is because he gets to feel his own masculinity. And he can only feel that when he's really emptying himself out. My husband talks about how men are like bears. They need to go into hibernation. That's just like part of their process, right? And, honestly, they have to feel safe to be all of who they are, right? If you just love a certain aspect of them, then they won't feel safe to express all of themselves, right? So they won't feel safe to tell you the truth. They don't feel safe to be authentic and transparent so you can actually deepen your connection. And the other piece that I also want to mention is I was kind of like comparing it to Thanksgiving, right? So like imagine I had a woman who reached out to me and she said, we spent the whole weekend together and now I just dropped off the earth, right? He needed like a little break. And I said, well, imagine you have like a Thanksgiving dinner together and you're upset that he doesn't want to eat more food. Like after he stuffed like a turkey on Thanksgiving and had like 3 desserts and, it's like give them some space to actually metabolize and digest the weekend. So that's important too to learn.
I think that is so true. So, Antia, what is that last reason why men respond to distance?
Well, and this is known as the cliffhanger.
Mm.
Right? We have to have this part inside of our brain that wants to predict all the time. And what we want to do instead, we want to actually almost like interrupt that prediction. Why? So he focuses more on you, right? He pays more attention. When you drive into a new neighborhood, like you drive a little slower. You're like, oh, there's a grocery store. Okay, good. Versus like if you drive into that same neighborhood for the 100th time, you don't even notice how you get yourself from one green light to the next or how many blocks you drove. So if you want to consistently have that investment of the man, right, and that like focused presence from him, you have to be able to allow him to experience cliffhangers. cliffhangers. And cliffhangers, again, it goes a little bit back to the commercial world, of course, because they use that very much for their advantage. When you watch your favorite TV show, and guess what? You don't get the answer. Is Joe going to be proposing or not? Watch the commercial. We'll see you in a moment, right? Because we know that this is part inside of our brain that wants to close the loop. So when you give him space, right, you actually have like that, you have that open loop that causes that intrigue. Every time when a loop is being closed, the intrigue decreases. Every time when you open a loop, and when you even expand on the loop without closing it, the intrigue increases.
Love that so much. And I would love to talk a little bit about what this looks like. So we know this doesn't look like playing games. It doesn't look like ignoring his text messages or phone calls or pretending that you're not interested when you really are. What does this look like? Is it just truly about having your own life, having a full, rich, juicy life so you're not so focused on him all the time? I would love to hear all your thoughts on that.
Yeah, because when you're other focused, you're already naturally out of balance. So it's not just about him getting back to you within whatever the day or the week or whatever you wanted, whatever outcome you want, but it's actually you showing up authentically, consistently, so you don't resent him long term, right? So what that looks like is, oh, I'm a little too other focused. Let me focus on myself. And maybe there's actually sadness. So yes, maybe you want to process emotions, or maybe there's even anger. Who does this guy think he is? And why do guys, all the things. Take a little, you could even take a cooking spoon and just hit a pillow. It doesn't have to be anything advanced. And it can also be how I can really grow myself, how I can enhance my intuition, right? And like my internal confidence. So it's more about understanding how can I create my own equilibrium inside of myself, because you know what? When you're in your equilibrium, Helena, you're naturally magnetic. So if that's not happening right now, it's because it's basically the man saying, hey, let's get back into each other's equilibrium, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And again, I just want to reiterate, we're not making excuses for a man here. If he is, dropped off the face of the earth for several days and this is a constant pattern, obviously there's something to take a look at there. But this is for those moments when you're feeling a little anxious because it's been a few hours or maybe half a day or so and he hasn't gotten back to you. This could be potentially what's going on. So I love everything you shared here today, Antia. This was so informative. I would love to have you back on my podcast sometime soon. By the way, if you're watching this on YouTube, Antia and I recorded an amazing podcast episode on 5 signs of a narcissist and how to deal with narcissistic partners and stop attracting them. That's available on my podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anywhere where you listen to podcasts. That was such an important episode. So everyone definitely go check that out. And where can people find you and get a hold of you? I know you have a free quiz that you're offering. I'll include a link to that in the description or the episode details.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're ready to attract the right man for you, if you just don't know what in the world is standing in the way, because you're being told you're the whole package, but somehow men don't get it, it's a great time to take my free Magnetize Your Man quiz. And you can find that at mymquiz.com.
Thank you so much for joining me and sharing your wisdom on this topic today. I'll include links to your free quiz and anywhere else people can get a hold of you in the description or episode details. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to my channel, and I will hopefully see you all again very soon.